Okay, hi, hello everyone. I'm sorry about this blackout screen that just happened. I don't know what's going on, but let's just try this again, and we will cut together the video in a second and make sure this actually works. So let's see. Here's the model, right? You can see that. I don't know why. I don't understand why this was a black screen before. No idea what's happening here. Okay, let's do this again. So you can see it, right? I really have no idea why these screens are constantly black. It's like so annoying. Okay. Anyway, I will just do this again just for the quantitative model. And then we will cut it together and have a nice clean video. Let's get it started. Okay. Now. Okay, here we have my quantitative model. Let me explain how this works. On the left side, you see the swing states: Arizona, Georgia, Michigan, Nevada, North Carolina, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, as well as the popular vote. And what we are going to do in this quantitative model is take a sober, non-biased perspective on where we stand in this election and how we correct for the polling errors and how we create different scenarios to see what that actually means based on how this polling error is being corrected or not corrected in this election. So let's start here. And what we see is the last poll in 2020 on November 2nd, before the election. And you saw this is Trump perspective versus Biden. Trump was behind 2.2% in Arizona, 0.2% in Georgia, 5.5% in Michigan, 5% in Nevada, 0.3% North Carolina, 3.7% Pennsylvania, and 9.2% in Wisconsin. And behind on the popular vote, 8%. So the first interesting thing you see here is that Trump was behind everywhere, and he was massively behind in Michigan, Wisconsin, in Pennsylvania, and also significant in Arizona, and of course on popular vote. Now, here you see the actual results of the election. Trump lost Arizona 0.3%, lost Georgia 0.23%, and so on and so forth, lost the popular vote 4.46%. And what I did now is I calculated the polling error. Simple, right? You subtract this from this, and you see that Trump was actually disadvantaged in the polls in 2020 by 1.9% in Arizona, for example. He was actually advantaged 0.03% in Georgia. So actually the poll said he's behind 2.2%, but he lost 0.23%. So the poll was actually pro-Trump or biased towards Trump in Georgia. But then you see here the biases in the other states. In Wisconsin, the bias against Trump was 8.57%. And you saw that Trump actually won North Carolina, despite the poll saying he's behind. Okay? So here in this column, we now have the Trump polling error effect, which tells you how much Trump is disadvantaged in the polls in 2020. Now, last thing before we go into some more details, the change of this polling error effect from 2016 is actually not that large. So what that tells us is that the pollsters did not learn from 2016. They committed similar mistakes in 2020. There's a whole theory what these mistakes were, but it has to do with Trump voters not responding. It has to do with, all these pollsters being very tightly interconnected with the media outlets who are 90% plus very anti-Trump biased. So there are all kinds of reasons why the polls don't work. Some of them intentionally or subconsciously by the people who conduct them, who are against Trump, and some of them because of the voters, the Trump voters not participating in the polls. So there are multiple effects. But we don't care about political reasons. We just look at the numbers. And what we want to look at next is what is at October 28th, 2024, the latest Real Clear Politics average. And what you see now, and that's the first indication that something is very different here, Trump is actually leading in the polls everywhere. He's leading in every single swing state, and he's leading the popular vote. And look at that. Biden led by 8%. Now Trump leads at 0.4%. That's an 8.5% swing. Wisconsin, this is a massive swing in the polls, 9%. So that is the first, indication that there might be some concerns for the Democrats because Trump just leads everywhere. Now, on top of that, we have this polling error effect, and we can now do 2024 projections. And what I did here is I created 3 scenarios. Here's scenario 1, 2, 3. And scenario 1 assumes that this polling error effect from 2020 remains identical. So you get the same, anti-Trump effect. And here, that would be the results based on these polls. So if these polls are true, this error effect is true 100%. This is how Trump wins the swing states. He wins it massively. Now, the yellow color means everything under 1% advantage. I marked light yellow because there's more of a risk that Kamala wins. Dark yellow means there's a high risk that Kamala would win anyway. It's more likely Trump wins because he's still leading here, but at 0.2%, this is not a safe bet. So in this first scenario, 100% of the Trump polling error remains. You see this effect. Here in the second scenario, I assume the polling error is corrected by 50%. So all these numbers go down 50% because let's assume the pollsters learned their lesson and started to correct. I think this is actually the most likely situation, that they made it a little better. In this case, you see the effects here and you see the electoral votes. In scenario number 1, 100% polling error effect remains. Trump would win the Electoral College by 312 votes. So that's pretty clear. Get all 93 swing state votes. In scenario 2, corrected by 50%, he still wins by 312. Wow. And also with very little risk. Let's assume the third scenario, that actually the polling error goes down to 0%, which means the pollsters learned their lesson completely and had accurate polls this time, and everything is just completely accurate. In this case, Trump still wins with 312 electoral votes. Even if all these errors that were not corrected in 2020 from 2016 would be corrected 100%, Trump still wins 312 votes. So why do we need even the scenarios if the votes are always the same? Well, first of all, I didn't know that. I just modeled it out, and it's always 312. He always wins. But the yellow is not unimportant. Trump would win at 312, but we can say let's knock out the 2 dark yellow ones because it's just too critical to bet on. It's nearly 0. It's nearly even. So let's assume Kamala takes this and Kamala takes Michigan. Michigan and Wisconsin stay in Kamala hands, and that means Trump would be at 287. That's still 17 more than he needs to be president. So there you have it, what I think the scenario actually objectively is right now. And that means if I would pick a number and bet on it, it's 312 for Trump. If there is a range I would define, I would say on the low end, Trump likely has 287 electoral votes, more likely 312, and maybe something in between. How likely is it that Trump has more than 312? I think not likely. Of course, it's always possible, but it's more likely Trump has less than 287 than that he has more than 312. Because for more than 312, he would have to go into heavily defended Democrat areas, New Mexico, Virginia. Possible, but the differential he has to overcome is much more than the differential Kamala would have to overcome in this thing. So basically, for Trump to have more than 312 electoral votes, he would have to go into states where he is behind much more than any of these numbers. So it's more likely that Kamala actually gets drags him down more than 287 because all she has to overcome, assuming there's 0% error, which I think is wrong, but she would have to overcome just 0.7%, 0.7 or 0.5% or 0.8. So Kamala would have a better shot in dragging Trump below 287 than Trump has a shot getting above 312. But I think both will have a very hard time to get Trump out of that window that I show here. So that's basically my bottom line in the quantitative model, 287 on the lower end, on the upper end, 312. Objectively, I think the best number to bet on is actually 312. That's what I see the probability range. So let's go into some other perspectives. continue with Polymarket. Okay, cut. I just re-recorded this. We will cut it together with the previous live recording. So we will actually have a video where you have that screen and you have the Polymarket and everything else I said. So I hope we get this done by tomorrow. And then we have a video that we will just publish again and maybe take down these live streams. But good to have you guys watching, and see you in a minute.